be here, mate. Enjoying it.
Well, good. I'm excited that you're here. When we first started talking, I was actually amazed because I started to learn a little bit about your story from just us chatting at the gym. And you told me literally, like in the course of like 2020, I think it was, during COVID, you set up a gym, became a parent, moved house.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine what you've packed into that 1 year there.
Yeah, so like things were pretty steady for a while, like PTing, lots of hours, but trying to grow a business. But COVID then hit and we was always looking to open a gym. The October before COVID, we had just bought our house. And then COVID hit, so like no income. It was pretty stuck really. And then it's just like fortunate. We had a contact that said, look, there's a unit available. Do you want to take the option? So we took the option 3 weeks before lockdown to set the gym up. So we didn't know how long it was going to go on for. Oswald was pretty positive and like, oh, I'd be fine. See what happens. We'll crack on.
Well, no one had experienced anything. I mean, taking it 3 weeks before, I suppose we were only thinking, God, what was going to happen back then? No one knew. No one knew what was going on. It could have just been, I mean, that first lockdown, I thought it was a couple of weeks maybe.
Yeah, so like it was in Italy for a while, wasn't it? Like, and everyone's like, oh, Italy's going to go into lockdown, this, that, and the other. And I was like, well, you know, what is a lockdown? Which is, you know, we'll see what happens. So we just took the risk. So it was either now or never. I was getting a bit like disjointed with PT and it was going on for a long time, unsocial hours, and I was kind of thinking, what's the future of this? Blah, blah, blah. So then it got to the point I was like, right, there's an option. There's a unit. You know, I know the area. I've got, you know, it's established client base now. Me and the missus had just been together. She was helping me with a company. So she decided to jack in what she was doing. She was working for her dad as an electrician.
Okay.
So she'd been an electrician for 10 years. So my dad's a tradesman as well. So with all the help, we was like, right, we can, you know, we've got assistants, trade accounts here and there, and we can get materials to set it up how we want it. So she was doing that for 10 years. We was like, right, we're going to set our own thing up. Here we go. So new house, 3-4 months later, set the gym up, like trying to do the tiling at my house in the weekends, all working a week in the gym, trying to get that ready. Obviously lockdown, can't do that much, but yeah, just mental, just straight into lockdown once we had opened, basically. So I was trying to set the gym up while I was doing that, like painting, decorating, just me and her really, just painting the walls, priming them, getting them ready for what we can do and getting ready to open when we actually eventually come out of lockdown. So yeah, we was open. So Leo was one like 2-3 weeks ago. So we literally was open for about a year. She fell pregnant. So like it's been a crazy like last 15 months or so.
I said to my wife earlier when she said, "Oh, who are you talking to today?" I said, "Oh, James from the gym." She's like, "All right, what's the story?" And I said, "Well, because of course we've just had a baby as well."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, can you imagine? Obviously, to my wife, we've had a baby. Can you imagine at the same time of having a baby, we're setting up a business and we're going to move house?" She's like, "No."
Yeah.
she was gobsmacked kind of what
yeah.
you've been through. And also the gym. I tell you this in the gym all the time. It's the best gym. I love this gym. I feel fortunate that gym is there, and it's so fortunate it's like around here at this time because, in my opinion, it's just totally different than to going to Fitness First or Pure Gym. What do you think makes the difference? What have you done differently to make it the way it is?
Obviously, I kind of have a bit of a no dickhead policy. So like I try to avoid having like really self-centered people like in the mirrors and that kind of stuff, that kind of vibe. But when I was a PT, I was like, right, how can I make myself different? Like do stuff that's gonna build. So like I was trying to like develop a community, even when I wasn't at the gym and I didn't own the gym myself. So I was like, right, how can I get people to work together and like take some pressure off? It's just one-to-one, like seeing one person there at the door, next person comes in, and so on and so forth. I was like, how can I build a community? So we started semi-private personal training. We'd have like 2 or 3 people together in a session. They kind of do their own thing in their own programming, but they end up training alongside each other. And you've gone from having a handful of people doing that to now that's predominantly what the gym is about. So we run all the classes and the memberships in that sense, where you got strength clubs, boot camps, and larger groups. But 70% of our income comes from semi-private.
Okay.
So like, it's this small group personal training sessions where everyone does all their training together. They're on their individual plans, but they develop this community, and they come in like, oh, what's this your new one? I'll come here. We'll come to that time as well. So now they've gone through this journey, and they always want to train together, and they have this like fear of missing out. But they always want to be in the gym together. They train together, set little gym challenges every month, bits and pieces like that, and it just kind of like snowballed. So I managed to do that when I wasn't having my own place, and then going from having this system to then being in a gym and being able to adapt it and formulate it from what it was to where it is now, it's just like expanded and got much, much bigger and better.
So do you think the gym community is an important part of kind of the culture?
I think it's essentially like 90% of it.
Really?
Yeah, like obviously I've got to turn up on time, be punctual, be charismatic, and be there and aware, and be obviously on top of everyone and make sure everyone's doing everything and doing my job, that kind of stuff. But like a lot of it now runs itself in that sense, whereas when I'm on a semi-private, if they're quite advanced and they know what they're doing, so like one of the girls, Tatiana, might come in, she competes at World's Strongest Woman. Like, she's also a coach herself, so she comes in for semi-private with me, so she's got her programming that's catered to go to Worlds. We've got all the Strongman equipment to do that. It's not where they're a Strongman gym, but we have all that equipment that she can train on, and she does it. And everyone there likes her because she's like into something more extreme, and everyone pushes her along and wants to see her do well. So you've got that end of the spectrum, and you've got people who are completely novice, and they're on there as well. And you end up with this massive blend, and they all seem to just like get along. It's kind of like a very low stress, low intensity environment where people can just relax, and it just kind of like breeds itself. It's like really easy to run now in that sense, like the coaching element of it. They're all kind of like know the routine, know the system, and you kind of like have all these people who've been doing it for 4 or 5 years, and people come in and they see what they are like is it expected of them, and once they're in that routine, it's kind of like easy to tick them over. I find that helps massively.
Well, I think to achieve anything in the gym, I think we all know it's about consistency. You got to turn up. But it's also then, when I was really getting into the gym, I started training with someone at the very beginning. So therefore, there was a joint responsibility. You have to be there at 6.
Yeah. Accountability.
It's the accountability. And actually, what I noticed with your gym and the people that are there, they're all in the same group, and therefore they're like, well, where are you?
Yeah.
Where aren't you there? And they were saying, so there is like this accountability, but also a community where people want to be there and they want to train together. And I was reading some of the social posts before, and like some people was just on there just saying, if they miss out, it is that. And it's very hard to get that fear of missing out going to the gym.
Yeah.
And that's somehow you've kind of created that.
Yeah, it's amazing, really. Like, I honestly think a lot of the people are the ones that create it. So there are some like really big personalities at the gym, and they just make the environment so much nicer for everyone. Like, it's so welcoming. Everyone says hello to each other. Everyone's very welcoming. It's just one of those things that just seems to have rubbed off really well. We seem to have like hit the nail on the head in that essence. The people just enjoy coming, and the bigger the group seems to have more of a snowball effect on it. I imagine if it gets really big, it might change, but I'm trying to control that.
I mean, it's also I've been going and training for years now, but it's also it's different, because if I think about my past, and I've done bodybuilding stuff, and then I've done cardio stuff and running marathons and stuff, and then I've also done CrossFit. It's like your gym is a perfect blend of all of that, but in one. But you don't come in, and if I think about Fitness First, where we both used to if you work, me train, and walk straight into Fitness First, left hand side all cardio, and then but obviously in your gym it's not like that.
No, it's set up very differently.
Very differently, and that I think for someone who understands training. It's taken me a long time to understand training, to understand, this is what good looks like. Yeah. You don't need to be going off doing marathons every day to kind of get the physique you want. Yeah,
you could look at it in 2 ways. Like, you could be a CrossFit gym, and you could just do CrossFit and then get, lots of members because they attract that kind of personality, a really type A personality, who want to do CrossFit or like runners, and we kind of like have that blend of we're kind of in the middle ground where a lot of people do competitions, they do running, they do strongman, they do bits and pieces, and we kind of like just sit in that little middle ground of you can do. So we have like a lot of CrossFit athletes come down and they train, but they do their weights training for their CrossFit at our gym, because a lot of CrossFit gyms don't let them use the open gym. So they want to go do their basic lifts, their squats, their deadlifts, their overhead press, and do their compound movements. But CrossFit gyms often don't let open gym happen. So they use our gym, and they come and they do their basic compound stuff, and their basic strength training there. So we kind of sit in this little middle ground.
Which I think is probably the best place to be, because obviously fitness is subjective, you know, and the fitness, well-being, health, it's all very subjective down to what it is that you're trying to achieve and everything. But I think for me, it sits nicely in the middle, because when I've been to going to CrossFit gyms, after a while, I just think, I don't want to do that today. I don't want to do that WOD. And I think it's great for someone maybe starting out, or even someone who really wants to progress, but someone who sits kind of just in the middle, where you've done it, but you don't want to compete, or, you know, you just want to train and have a good session. You know, it's like, you don't necessarily want to do that CrossFit session, or I don't know, it falls nicely in between, which is kind of where I think the best part of it comes. That's why I think it's so attractive.
You don't have to be so extreme at anything.
No.
We're like,
it's like you've taken the best of all of it, really.
Yeah, and I think that's just a bit of my personality. That it's not like we set out a business plan. We're like, right, we're gonna sit in the middle ground of all these other things, and then that's where we're gonna be. It's kind of like my training style, my personality, and it's kind of like rubbed off that way. Like Jess has done, like my partner, she's done CrossFit in the past. She's done strongman stuff. She's done bits and pieces like that. And we have this like blend of experience, and that's just where we sit, and that's where we are. Kind of like, I like to think, balanced people. We don't want to be right on the end of the spectrum with anything, and then we just have this blended approach now.
What's it like working with your partner?
Intense.
Is it?
Yeah. She will hate me for this because she will watch this, but she's good as gold. Like, she works really hard, and she does all of the background stuff.
Right.
So I have the ability to come to the gym. She does all my food for me, but I've got to turn up and I've got a coach. And she's like, right, admin, advertising, any messages, social media posts, whatever it is, she's all over it. And she essentially has to put up with me working all day, getting home late, unsociable hours. I think we're up to about 6 or 7 coaches now, so it's definitely growing in the right direction. But there's no sign of slowing down yet.
No, well, I think it's growing.
Yeah, the trajectory is definitely on the up, and I think she would like the idea of a bit more family time, especially with a 1-year-old. But essentially, we're trying to push harder to get over these hurdles, because obviously during COVID, setting up a gym, we acquired debt. We've got to pay that off now, so that's one of the things you don't really look into, right? You're not just paying for the gym, you've got to pay off the investment that you put in to start with. So
Do you find it was a big risk at the time? Or I mean, it sounds like it was a calculated risk. I mean, going into any business is.
Sounds a bit cheesy, but I'd like try to back myself a little bit.
Sounds like you're in Love Island.
Yeah. I've got good people around me, good business people around me. So a lot of my best friends have owned their own businesses for 10 years. Got a lot of older friends who've done their own things for a while. I said, if you get into real trouble, I help you out. So blah, blah, blah. But essentially we had to go and get, cash deposit to put down and invest heavily to set up. So going into lockdown, we were still paying that off, and we will be for a while. But, that adds stress, right? You've got a baby, don't see your missus as much as you should. Like, it's not like I go to work early. I go to work really early and come back really late.
I mean, it's really early.
Yeah.
Aren't you? Because you're there at 6, I'm there at 6.
Yeah.
So, and then you're working there through to
9 o'clock at
9
night.
o'clock at night. And it has to be manned. You need someone there.
Yeah.
But and the flip side of that is that you're also doing this with your co-founder, Jess.
Yeah.
So in partnership,
Yeah.
at work, at home,
Mhm.
with baby, it's just so much on.
Yeah. So you do all that, and then little Leo might be up at 2 o'clock in the morning, so you're giving a bottle, back to bed. Alarm goes at 5, and you start your day again.
There's nothing like setting yourself a challenge.
Yeah. It's mad. When you actually sit down and think about it, you realise how bonkers you are, but it's a bit of a challenge, isn't it? A little hurdle to get over.
Yeah. But I sort of feel like almost you're going through this because you can see a better future.
Yeah.
And you know that's going to come. I mean, working for yourself, you know you're going to have to work hard and for a lot of hours. But I see a better future in the, if you can get through this hurdle.
I'm massive on like delayed gratification.
Hmm.
Like you work really hard, and like we've only just got to a point now where I'm taking enough money home that I'm better off now than I was when I was just PTing.
Right.
So like it went massively backwards to begin with. So it's not necessarily just the financial reward you might or might not get. It's the purpose behind it, the community, and the sense of building something that you have over time.
Mm-hmm.
So you run your own business, so you hopefully you get rewarded financially for that, but it's the purpose and the bigger picture at the end of the day, and that's I think the biggest drive for me personally. That you're building something that you're proud of, and hopefully something so good one day someone might want to buy it. You might want to sell it, you might not, but hopefully you build this little entity that you're proud of. That's really for me what it's all about, that you have this direction and goal and purpose, that you have a reason to get up every day. I don't want to be I think I'd be dangerous if I had so much free time that I could just potter around. I think I'd be incredibly lazy and bored.
Do you think this is giving you more purpose and more meaning?
Massively, yeah. Massively. I can't imagine life without it now. Does that make sense? So you've got this direction you're trying to achieve. I'm never one to be like, right, look back where we were and now we're here and things are so good. It's like, right, next month, and you're always looking to grow. And once we get to that point, we can do this. And once we get to that point, we can do this. And how can we 2 years time, I want to put a mezzanine floor in the gym, so we've got another section to it, so there's more space to expand and bits and pieces. It's always like the next stage. It's never like let's settle. Like it's very much on an upward trajectory of like where can we grow, how can we get better, like expand, etc.
What have been those, since you set up, what have been those early challenges that you've had to deal with? Obviously, we talked about you're going through COVID, so really hard time. And then, like, first, you've had to get financing.
Yep.
You've had to, and I don't know, was it a gym before?
There was a gym, yeah.
Ah, right, because funny enough, I've lived here for 8 years now. I didn't even know about it. I've always gone to fitness first. And it was only when I think you were like at a fete or something like that, and I saw you guys there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll check this out, because I was just coming out. I wasn't going to a gym then. I was just training wherever. And then I saw it advertised, and I thought, oh, this is good. I just didn't have no idea you were there. So I was really, really happy that I found you. But so there was a gym there before. Then what happened? I mean, there must have been so many challenges in just setting that up at the very beginning.
So there was a gym there before, and I knew the owners. They set it up many years before we were there.
Right.
And they went off in their separate directions in the end. There was only one guy left. And it was like a really sad story, but he ended up passing away of cancer.
Oh, no.
So, like, he was only mid-40s, early 40s.
Oh, God, that's young.
Yeah, really young.
And he's probably owns a gym. He's fit, right? I imagine.
He was more academic than he was active, if I'm honest. But, like, when it happens to the nicest people, it's really harsh. But he had cancer as a much younger kid. And I think if you've had it once, you're more likely to get it a second time.
That's awful.
Yeah, really sad. And he tried to hide it and keep it a secret, but you could see his health was deteriorating. I didn't find out until the week before he died. He said, when they diagnosed him, he had a year to live, but he went on for 2 or 3 years in the end.
Right. So did you know him quite well?
Relatively, he came from Fitness First when I was there, and he moved over. So I used to be a member at that gym, and then the unit closed down, and we took it on once it had closed and moved on. But
okay.
yeah, really sad. There's 3 of them together, and I think they had 3 different ideas of what a gym should be. So one left, and the second person left, and then there's one guy, but he ended up, passing away. It's really sad.
Oh, bless.
Because he was, in my position, like trying to push, but like he was battling these like health conditions.
God, it's unbelievable, isn't it, that can happen?
Yeah, really sad. He was a really nice guy. Didn't really just, no one deserves it, but yeah.
Family?
He was single, but his parents were there a lot when he was in the final for like a few months.
Yeah.
So it's hard to see.
So what happened after that then? So you were a member. So you were already
I was training there.
You were already training there, doing
So
PT. Been doing PT there.
Only kind of like to help him out a little bit.
All right.
So I was like, I'll come down. I'll do some of my clients here, so I can keep the gym open. And then it just closed. So we scooted off back to where we were, and it was just a funny time because I think he passed away in November, December.
Right.
So it was about 3-4 months later. We got so my girlfriend Jess, her dad is friends with the landlord of the units, and then they just had a conversation and said, why don't we work something out? And then we took the unit on over him and took a new lease.
Wow. Yeah. I suppose it's fortunate that you were in that position, that you were like thinking, okay, there's a chance. So, I mean, what were you doing prior for you to then think, I'm going to take the leap here? Because obviously you've had a lot of background around fitness, around nutrition, around PT. Where did all this interest come from? Like at the very beginning, how did you get interested in sort of fitness and nutrition and as a career?
So I was always into sports as a kid. Played lots of sports, whether it's football, rugby, whatever it may be. Like happy to jump in at anything. Did it at college, so I went to do sports at college and coaching. Did football badges and my level 2 PT there and all that kind of stuff. Dad's a builder, so finished that. I was like, right, I'm going to work with you. I hated it.
Really?
Absolutely. Like, never work. Like, working with Jess is one thing. Working with my old man, completely different.
Why was it so different?
I think me and my dad are pretty similar, and then we clash heads a little bit. So.
Also, he's a boss, probably.
Yeah.
Point, yeah.
So, yeah, it didn't work. Like, we did it. I was there for 2 or 3 years, but looking back, I should have been, a bit more engaged with it. Like, it would have helped me a lot with my setting up a gym and like taking on more information rather than have to rely on other people for their handy skills. I'm okay, but I could have definitely learnt a lot more, and if I'd been a bit more receptive.
But were you passionate about it? Did you like doing it?
This is the big thing, right? I hated it.
No.
So
I don't think you can start getting good at something you don't like.
Yeah.
I started working with my dad years ago, and he's sort of in mechanic and engineering, and I was like, I don't want to work here.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't where I'm going to end up.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't going to be what I'm going to do. So it's just like, I knew he would have wanted me to go more down, and he was very handy and everything else. And I was just like, I'm not very good with my hands. You are, but I'm not. So I'm like, I can think. Well, but I was just like, this isn't going to work out. I need to go on. You need to go on your own little journey, I think.
Yeah, 100%. So I couldn't agree more. Like, I had no passion in it. I couldn't see myself set up at a building company, and I couldn't see myself doing some sort of path in this direction. Like, went into fitness, and I was coaching people, and it got to a point where I was like, cool, I might have to go and do something else because this is like draining me. Just that system of like, you're a PT, you're at Fitness First, you've been doing it for years now, you're as busy as you're ever going to get on a one-to-one basis. Like, do I go online? Do I go, do a different career path altogether? One of my friends works in orthopedics. Like, I'll come and do some sales work in here. You've got a good background of like biochem and physiology and stuff. I was like, I could do that. I was like prepping for interviews at the time, like, because I was getting pretty demoralised with like the one-to-one scenario, paying huge amounts of rent at a Fitness First type gym.
It's expensive there, isn't it, for PTs?
I think it was like $7,000 a year when I was there.
$7,000. I wanted to say, I've had a few friends who are
Yeah.
PTs there. Now, I'm sure they were saying $600 a month or so. Does that work out? Something like that?
Yeah, roughly.
So you got to cover off quite a few clients just to cover off your rent.
Yeah, and then you obviously got to pay your mortgage, your rent at home as well. So
Yeah.
it adds up. So if you're doing that, you've got to be doing some good hours.
Mm.
And when you're at a Fitness First, you have to have your clients as a member of the gym. So you've got an obstacle there as well. So technically, you've only got the pool of people who have come through the gym. So you're relying on the gym to be successful as well as to get any clientele for yourself.
Yeah.
And then you're just one of 10 to 15 PTs at the time who are there.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of the time a fast turnover of PTs in these facilities. So the qualification scheme to become a PT is very low now. So you can do it online. You can do it in a matter of weeks. So how much information you can actually learn over that time is pretty low.
That's always been something, because I've had 4 or 5 PTs in the years, and everyone has provided slightly conflicting advice.
Yeah.
And then if I go and check that piece of advice online, I'm like, and then you just end up in a world of just being a bit confused around what should I be doing for training? What is the right nutrition? And then it's like, sometimes it's, and I think when I started to really understand why the advice could have been conflicting, and it was that it felt like the barrier to entry. Someone could do a 6-week course.
Yeah.
My cousin's a quite a well qualified PT and runs gyms and stuff, and he was like, 6-week course.
Yeah.
It's like, how could you possibly learn everything about nutrition in that time? It's just impossible.
And there's no real governing body that keeps
No.
everyone in check. There's no one making sure you do CPD. There's no one making sure you're insured. There's no one like managing the system. It's just qualification, go work in the gym.
But that means, and this is the thing, because if you're a lawyer, you can't give incorrect advice. You can be sued over that sort of stuff. James Smith actually talks a lot about this. I don't know if you follow James Smith. Yeah. So he talks a lot about this, which is then you can sign up to a PT and they can give you incorrect advice, which isn't quite right for you for whatever reason. Then you can get that conflict. And he's obviously, James Smith was always quite no bullshit. And that it was a lot of years before I found James. And then I was like, oh, that seems more right.
Yeah.
Because he was able just to say, right, if you want to lose weight, it's a calorie deficit.
Yeah.
That's it. And I swear, all those five PTs could never give me that answer. And I was like, that's all I was trying to do at the time. So I was a bit overweight. And I was like, all I need to do is try and reduce my weight. But I couldn't. Is it paleo? Is it keto? Is it this? Is it that? Is it high fat, low fat? I'm like, flipping out. I'm going around in circles.
People can't give like real simple objective advice. It has to be like cookie cut, at least paleo, whatever it may be. Like, fine, cool, whatever. But essentially, it comes down to the same reason. You're still in a calorie deficit. You know, if you go keto and all of a sudden you don't eat pasta, rice, bread, donuts, whatever it is, all these things that you overeat, and you all of a sudden cut those out, chances are you're going to be in a calorie deficit, and it's as simple as that.
When did you know this? Just like, is this something that you learned as part of your early training, or is this something that came later? Or
it's probably later, to be honest. Like,
because it felt like for years no one really knew, and then when
it exploded.
It seemed to explode after James said it, and then other people. Because even
I think James was still late to the bandwagon. He wasn't one of the original people, but like
Okay.
people, the top of the field was like Lane Norton, Eric Helms, those kind of guys who are out there putting out the information.
right.
Lyle McDonald, those kind of guys. They're all kind of like the top of the food chain, doing the studies, etc., promoting. So yeah, it's kind of like you can't sell those products. You can't sell calorie deficit. So
No, it's just a fact.
yeah,
It's just a fact.
and I try to not do food plans, and I try not to do anything that's like all these fancy little things that are gonna, you know, fluff it out. We essentially go, right, what we need to do for this person is correct calorie deficit. Now we need to find out information about this person, and how we create that for them is the best way for them. Whatever they do and they can stick to is the best way. So it doesn't matter if it is keto, if it is paleo, we need to know you're eating less calories now than you were. Whatever your maintenance is, we need to be below that. And we just go by that. So, do you want to do intermittent fasting? Do you want to and create scenarios? Does this suit your eating pattern? When do you most likely overeat? What's your relationship with food like? Who does all the shopping in the house? Can you have more control over this? Where do you snack? All those kind of things. And then create the food diary around that, rather than go, right, what you're going to do is eat 5 meals a day. It's going to be this, this, and this. Because again, that doesn't work. Because people might stick that for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, but no one lives off a food plan. Like, life doesn't work like that. You work in sales. I'm sure you go out for sales meetings. Like, you can't stick to a food plan there.
Well, you can't most of the time.
Yeah.
Especially in normal life, especially since COVID, especially since having a baby, since working at home.
Yeah.
And then you're in meetings, you can't stick. That's life. You just can't stick to these things. You can have your foundations now. After loads of years of me doing this, I'm like, okay, I've got some foundations now, which I'm like, after doing all of these different things, I'm like, oh, I just take the best of all of them.
Yep.
Doesn't mean it's perfect, but and there's loads of times I go off the rails, but at least I know the basis of trying to maintain reasonably healthy. And actually over time, once you've done it lots and lots of times, you're like, I can actually not use the fitness trackers and all that sort of stuff now, because I know my breakfast is 400 calories. I'm happy with that. I don't need to worry about it. But that information almost wasn't available 10 years ago, or I couldn't find it. I really struggled with those PTs.
Social media has helped this come to light, I think.
I think so.
Massively.
Yeah.
And the cream's risen to the top in that sense. So hopefully fitness has turned a corner, but you're still going to have lots of people out there with misinformation. And people like Lane Norton are always calling people out.
Right. I don't know who that is, actually.
That's one person worth have a look at. So
Yeah.
Check out Lane. Like, he'll aggressively call people out, but for the right reasons. He's great to good. He's that guy on Instagram, social media, trying to fact check people. So he does a good job of that.
So what was it, you were talking about how you start to recommend clients? So someone new comes to you now and says, I'd like to lose some weight.
Yeah.
What's your kind of line of questioning? What are you going to try and... Because you've worked in being a PT for a lot of years now. Is that what normally happens? People want to come to you with something simple, I'd like to lose weight? Or do you find it's bigger than that?
Definitely on the surface, people want to go, right, I want to lose weight. Body composition is always most people's goal, right? Trying to look better naked. That's the essential. Right, how can we look better naked? That's all most people are focused on.
Really?
So for me, the way I create buy-in is go, right, can we attach that to a performance goal? Because if you're trying to constantly drill people on how to look better, it gets very mentally draining. Because you're like, right, if you can do these things, just by default, you're going to be a fitter, healthier person. And we've created a little side challenge to the actual challenge. We go away and focus on that. And then along the way, you end up with the results you want anyway. Rather than just being so focused on the vanity side of things, we have this little, whatever it may be that they're interested in, like increasing sets and reps and weight or whatever they're doing. They're getting better as a human by more compound liftings with good techniques. But essentially, we find out what they're interested in, how many times a week they can actually train, what their commitment's like, their motivation, where that comes from. Is it intrinsic, extrinsic? Like, are you just there because their friends coming to the gym? There's so many different areas we want to look at before we go away and create a plan for someone. We need to know what they're coming to the table with, if that makes sense. Do they do the cooking in the house? Do they not? All that kind of stuff. We really need to have an understanding of these things, and just so you can create realistic goals. Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest challenge when someone starts thinking, I want to be fitter, I want to be healthier? What do you think those barriers to entry are? What's the common pushback, I suppose, you get, or the areas where people just aren't, trying to go from a lifestyle where they're not training, they're not eating the way that they wanted to. A lot of people, if you ask them and say, would you like to look better, would you like to feel better, they're going to say yes.
Yeah.
But it's that big gulf in between the years, or just making those changes. I know when I started going on the journey, I was like, I really want to do this, but then it's all those temptations. There's so many things that will send you off on a different journey, as in drinking or whatever, overeating, and then, food tastes good, alcohol's nice. Yeah. And it's just, there's so many temptations to kind of take you down the wrong path. And then people have like a psychological connection to food. And that is, well, I want to have the things that I want to have. But then also you start eating those foods and then very quickly you're like, well, I want to also be fit and healthy. It's really hard to get
a good balance, right?
Yeah, it's really hard. I think that's almost the hardest thing.
I think you have to accept you're not going to be like stage ready as well.
Yeah.
Like,
a lot of people come to the gym going, oh, I'm going to try, and that was me all those years ago. I'm going to be ripped in 90 days. I'm going to do this, this, and this, and realise, I never made that goal ever.
I mean, it's possible, but are you willing to give up what you need to give up to get there? Like, it's quite and a lot of people, when they do get to those kind of like levels of low body fat, aren't happy. They like the idea of it. They're no happier as a person. So what's the point getting and suffering when you could be in great condition, just not like absolutely ripped? You can still be, athletic, strong, fit, just not absolutely ripped out and shredded. Like, just a stage away from that is much healthier and maintainable. Trying to maintain that is a nightmare.
Yeah. I can imagine trying to achieve that is a nightmare as well, because you literally have to give up everything. But it's also, it's like you see this image of someone and think, oh, I want to look like that. And then if you know how much effort and how much sacrifice you have to give up, I think what I always liked about what James said years ago was just that he was like, well, what would 70% of that look like, or 60% of that look like, and actually trying to maintain that throughout the year, and having a bagel or having something else that you like to eat, and actually having it, because he was talking a lot more about balance and wellness, and also just setting yourself realistic goals. I went down that trap constantly of just going like, right now, this is the time, and I'm going to really focus. And then invariably you get to that 3 months or 6 months later. I remember once I'd given up alcohol for, 4 months or so, and everyone was going out having fun, and I was like, I am sad. I'm like, I was like, I'm just staying in on a Friday night. Everyone else is going out, and I'm not, because I want to look a little bit better. Yeah. I was like, this isn't. Then your mental health doesn't go in the right place, because you're just thinking, what's the point of this?
Yeah, get down the shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that sweet spot is really important. Finding that sweet spot and being happy and content in there with, you might go through phases where you lean a little bit towards the fitness, and a phases where you go, right, I'm a little bit too party and I'm having a little bit too much fun. I'm going to go back and find that sweet spot. And you go swings and roundabouts around that. But essentially, you should be content where you are in that sweet spot of like, I think you're a good example, to be fair, where you've done lots of other things, but life is life, and you do what you can do, and you get by that way. So having that balance of, like you said, with your food, you know how much that is because you've got good eating habits now. So you don't have to over stress about it. So this is your most common breakfast. You know how much that equates to in calories, roughly. And if you overeat on a Friday night, well, you can just undereat the next day or split that off over the next 3 or 4 days. If you had a pizza and whatever on a Friday night, there's no reason why you couldn't burn some more calories the next 2 days, or drop the calories off again, and you're back to where you were. Like, we don't need to overanalyze and, I've had a pizza, therefore I'm going to have the cookies, because that's what Domino's have sent on the side. Well, I'll have that. I don't have to absolutely ruin my diet and go really heavy just because I've broken this diet. We need to be a bit more able to correct ourselves. Go, right, well, that's that much. This is just a maths equation, essentially, and try to have less emotion attached to the diet or the phase of what we're doing, and then be like, right, well, I've done that now. This is what it was, and now I'm going to make up for it in this way, and so on and so forth, and move on and not overanalyze it. Just be a bit more rational about it.
Because, if you do overeat by a pizza or a bunch of calories one day, like you said, it's a mathematical equation. You can just reduce it a bit later. Got a friend. We can just reduce it later. It's not the worst thing in the world, and especially if you start working it out over a week or over a month, eventually things just balance themselves
Exactly,
out.
right.
Because on a Monday or a Tuesday or whatever, there's no chance I'm going to be eating that massive pizza.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm busy with work, and people are busy with work, they're getting on. Actually, you can go, well, I can have 4 or 5 really reasonably healthy days because I'm busy. You can prep your food and just, it's all that stuff at the very beginning. When someone's first trying to get into training and into all that stuff, they just don't know that.
No. But experience goes a long way, and having to understand it, right, I don't need to panic. Like, I just don't need to have this panic over having a nice piece of food. If I'm honest, ladies do it a bit worse than men, or they vocalise it more than men anyway. They come in, I'll go, I've gained a couple of pounds. I'm like, well, what have you eaten? Oh, I've had this and that. Oh, that's quite salty and carbohydrate. So you're going to gain a bit of water weight based off that, because you're going to hold the water out of those carbs.
Right.
Don't worry about it. It will come off. Like, it's just water weight. It's a fluctuation. Don't worry about it. Move on. But having the confidence to do that is different to, like, having the stress and the emotion attached to it. So being right, I know what's going to happen, and just go through the process of being right. If we're working out someone's calories according to the week, and they had this high day, we can literally offset it slightly throughout the rest of the week, and now back at, you know, net zero. They are where they would have been anyway. Some people like to do like a smart 5-2 approach, where you go, right, this is calories of the week. You're going to do all of your dieting on 2 days.
Right. Okay.
So you're going to eat the rest of your nutrition and calories on the other days, but you're going to have like super low days and do basically what your calorie deficit would have been across the week, all on 2 days. So you're still going to eat. You're still going to try and hit your protein target.
What should that be? Just
So roughly, it's just 1.8 grams per kilo of body weight. That's like for an adult trying to gain muscle mass, that's a good place to be.
So what does that work out? So if I'm trying to think for someone listening, so if I'm 75 kilograms, what's the equation there? 140-ish?
40-ish.
140. And will that help me with growth, or will that help me with maintenance?
Both. Yeah,
right.
both. So you should be able to build muscle with that.
Right.
As long as you're eating enough food on top of.
And if you're below that, what's going to happen? Is it just the fact that you just won't have enough protein to grow, or
Essentially,
or to maintain?
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, if you're a vegan, it's going to be a bit harder unless you get your protein intake in.
Right.
So, in theory, if you're vegan, your ability to gain muscle is the same, as long as you do the things you need to do to hit your protein target. Just in actual practice, it becomes a little bit more difficult, because you've got to get from beans, legumes, lentils, all that kind of stuff, soy, and all the options that they have. And the amount of food the volume of food you have to eat is phenomenal to hit your protein goal. So I've got one client who's vegan, and he manages to do it all the time. He's very into lifting and his training. He's gone from low 70 kilos to 80 kilos with a lower body fat. So over the period of like 4 or 5 years, he's gained kilos of muscle mass. But it's taken years. It's not a short-term fix. It's taken years and years and years. And he's done it. So he takes like additional leucine, which is an amino acid for muscle growth. So it stimulates muscle protein synthesis.
Okay.
And he's very particular, and he makes sure he A, hits his calories, and B, protein intake. And he builds plenty of muscle.
And they're the two key metrics to worry about, really. Whether you're trying to put on weight, lose weight, it's the number of calories, and then the protein.
Yeah, that's what I would focus on mainly. Always that first, and then anything after that falls where it falls. So we're looking at, right, what does that person need to do to hit the calories? And then we need to fill those calories with proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. So personally, for body composition, we go, right, what's the protein intake? Correct. 1.8 grams per kilo. Work that out. And then that's going to take out a percentage of their calories. And then the rest will be made up of fats and carbohydrates, and we go from there.
Right.
And then again, you base it off, what does that person's food habits like? Do they have a preference for carbohydrates? Do they have a preference for fats? And those generally have a push-pull relationship. One's higher, one's lower, or vice versa. So you might go, right, that's their protein intake. 20% of their food is going to be from fat, and the remainder is carbohydrates, or vice versa. That's like the first stepping stone we'll take,
Right.
and we'll go from there.
So when the first step of that, let's talk about the calories then. How do you know what sort of level? Because you were saying before it's about maintenance. So how can you figure out what your maintenance calories is to start with? Because I guess that might change over age or your body weight, or so. How would you firstly know where you are on that? Is there any way of working that out?
So you've got like Harris Benedict formulas and stuff like that, and you put activity on top of that, like a multiplier for activity. So you can do that, but you don't actually know until you eat your food of a predicted maintenance, and you find out. So, like anyone can go on the internet and type in Harris Benedict formula or whatever it may be to find out what their projected maintenance calories will be, but you won't know until you do it and you get the feedback.
Right.
So actually track, monitor your weight, and then go, right, this, when I do that, this happens. And then you've got data, and then you can use that data and you can go, right, I want to increase or decrease based on my goals, my food intake, and go from there. And you've got more data, because maintenance isn't like 2,500 bang on.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a range, and you're going to hover in a range. Some people's range is bigger than others, but you can have this range and go, right, I need to go in a calorie deficit, so I'm going to reduce. And as I get lighter, my maintenance is also going to drop.
Got you. Okay.
So,
because you're a smaller muscle mass.
exactly, you're a smaller person, you then have less food available to you. So then your deficit will have to be lower, and vice versa. So having that data point to go to is really important. And go, when I'm this weight, I'm this active, this is my maintenance, and it's in this range, higher, lower, that kind of stuff.
Right. Okay.
So once you get all these information points, you can then, because that's when the coaching begins. You need to find this information first before you can actually go, just do that and off you go.
So I was listening to a podcast the other day, and someone said, this is in relation to business,
Yeah.
but they said action creates information. Actually, I feel like it's relevant to what we've just talking about here,
Yeah,
which
literally
is
the same thing.
Yeah, because the action of the training and everything else creates the information to know where you should start, and whether that's 2.5, 2002, 1800, I don't know. It depends obviously on your starting position, but I suppose the thing is just to start on a number, and if you don't know, guess. I mean, I think there's loads of calculators online, isn't there?
Yeah, loads. And people worry about the starting point way too much. Just create the information, get a month's worth of data, and go from there, and you'll find out.
But also, is there must, when I found out and I started restricting my calories to a certain number, I'd find that if I did a certain number of calories, I'd feel mental. And then it was like, obviously that's not the right number. You know, you're too much in it, you're too restricted. And I'd find sometimes, I'm too restricted, I can't sleep properly. I was like, oh, okay. So the information is, that's too low.
Yeah, massively.
And then the funny thing was, I was always like afraid to be at 2,000. I was like, this is way too high if I'm trying to lose weight. And actually, that's a really good number.
Yeah, you should be in a deficit there for you.
Yeah.
Decent level of muscle mass, the amount of activity you do, that'd be a deficit, really.
Exactly. And I was afraid to be at that sort of, once I realised, you need to be in a calorie deficit, and I was around 2,000, I was like, this is way too high. This is far too high. And actually, complete misunderstanding of that, which was, actually, that's actually a really good number to be around. And actually, if anything, I could probably get away with being a bit higher.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were afraid to start off on like 2,000 or something like that. I know some people have been dieting for years and they yo-yo, like I did at the beginning. And they're like, well, I'm going to start my diet now. I'm going to start at 1,800. I'm like, no way. And I was like, you've got a lot of weight to lose, as a polite friendly comment to make to that person. I'm like, start higher, start at 2.5. Just start somewhere.
The biggest thing I tell people is give yourself somewhere to go.
Yeah, start somewhere and then come down. And they're like, oh yeah, but I'm not going to lose weight fast enough. I'm like, yes, but you've been putting on weight for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm being polite to a friend, joking around. But so what? Start somewhere so you can just get into the rhythm of doing it.
Build good habits, build good routines, get a better understanding of your food and nutrition and what calories are in foods. Don't be like, right, extreme dieting. So at the gym, we've got about 12 people doing like a funky little weight loss challenge for the next 20 weeks, starting next week. So basically, everyone's put 100 quid into a pot.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And if only one person hits their weight loss goal, they get all of the money.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
like a prize. So 12 people, 100 quid each, 1,200 quid.
That is a great
And it's like 2
incentive.
weeks before Christmas, so like it's a perfect timing. So if they all do it, they all get their £100 back. I said if no one hits it, it's going to charity. So we're just going to give the money to charity if no one hits their goals.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it should be fun and competitive. And it's just one of those little things that the gym would create like a community. So we'll see what happens over the next 12 weeks. But my message to the group was, don't drop your calories too low. You've got 20 weeks. What you don't want to get in is 6 to 8 weeks in and you're starving, you're sleep deprived, you're moody, you're irritable, like your training will dip. You kind of like peak that out at the end.
The thing is, you need energy to better train.
Yeah.
And that's why getting that balance is an energy balance. Getting that energy balance right is actually quite hard. And you do have to fail. When I started, I was used to like, I think back there I was doing keto or paleo or whatever. And then I was like, I'll do it okay for a couple of weeks and I'll totally burn out and crash. I was like, it only takes years of working that and going, oh, obviously your calories are too low. And also, if you're doing paleo, you could do with some carbs.
Yeah.
It's not the worst thing in the world to have some carbs. It's actually a really good thing to have balance in carbs. And now, just have more balance.
Yeah, with the carbs just get such a bad press, but
I don't know why they shouldn't.
it's like, yeah, if you are excessively overeating, it probably is from carbohydrates because they're so easily accessible.
Oh yeah.
And that's the issue. But
But that's the thing. I know, and I don't know where. Obviously, this is people trying to sell books years ago on paleo and keto and stuff. And the obvious thing was to say, because no one's going to tell you to drop protein. Someone's going to tell you to drop either fats, which is hard to explain.
paleo, Atkins, whatever it is.
And that actually is, dropping carbs. As soon as you say drop that food group, because then naturally people will stop eating crisps and cake and everything else, because it all sits into that sugary kind of carb. But what people forget is that you're taking out one whole food group. So yes, you will lose weight, but it's not maintainable.
No,
but
not at all.
actually having oats, sweet potato, some rice, is just going to make it more manageable.
Yeah.
If I don't have any carbs for a few days, I'm in trouble. But if you just have some sensible carbs, oats, etc., then actually I can feel full most of the day, and you can actually go about your day with the right level of energy. But it takes, I sort of want to speak to my younger self and go, are these the answers? You didn't have to go through 10 or 15 years of trying to figure it out. Actually, the answers are actually really simple, but the information just wasn't available the way back then.
You can't buy that experience.
No.
And like, even if I tell someone this information, they obviously don't take it on well. It takes them, like you said, a few times to fail before they start to accept it and not have this emotional response every time the scale doesn't go in the right direction.
But people do beat themselves up. They really, because they feel like they failed. They failed at this new diet. My mum does it every year. I'm going to do it this time. I'm really going to do it this time, she says.
You can't convince her with the information you have.
And I'm like, you don't need to suddenly start, Mum. You can just reduce a little bit here and do a bit more exercise. Oh, I walk every day. Okay, well, you're already doing the exercise. Great, cool.
Yeah.
She was like, oh, but my weight's not going down. I'm like, okay, well, somewhere you're eating some extra food, aren't you?
Yeah.
But it's just about getting them. Oh yeah, but I don't want to give up wine. Okay, you don't have to give up all your wine. Okay,
Some.
give up some of it. Just don't drink a whole bottle every night. Just drink a little bit.
Yeah, get out of the vineyard.
Yeah,
it's literally like those little things that you kind of have to like drift people away, but it takes enough times, and hopefully you can pick up the habits and routine, and not have this emotional connection to fail, then binge, and then start with an extreme diet again.
because that's the funny thing, isn't it? You fail, and most people will probably then go into some sort of binge, which then puts them back worse off to when they first started. And that was the whole thing years ago. People would be like, you start dieting, and then and I think also that word dieting is naturally saying you shouldn't, you're depriving yourself in some way.
Yeah, so when I say diet, I try to explain to people what we mean by diet is a phase of nutrition that is in a calorie deficit. It doesn't mean you're eating these food groups or X, Y, and Z. There's nothing associated to it apart from calorie deficit. Now, it has to be very mild, and you might not even notice, but that's all it means. Don't have any negative association to the word diet. So we just say calorie deficit now. Just completely get the word diet out of the way. So you're on a diet phase or a calorie deficit.
Because I think that's the thing as well. It's like, 'cause eating healthy and eating within a calorie deficit are totally different things.
Yeah.
You know, you could easily be, an avocado is wonderfully healthy food to have.
Yep.
But if you eat the whole avocado and suddenly you've downed 400 or 500 calories,
Yep.
you're not eating really ideally designed for a calorie deficit, but you are eating healthy. And it's these sorts of things in the industry which were like, I'm trying to understand it. You know, you've got to eat your healthy fats. I think you find out actually those healthy fats are really high in calories.
Yeah.
And you eat some nuts and suddenly you just down 250 calories. You're like, oh, but then it puts you in the wrong place. So it's all those things. It's all those types of failings. End up getting quite, you know, when I found out, I was like, okay, well, I could look at the calories in these foods, and I was absolutely shocked. Bag of nuts, 1,000 calories. I'm like, what? I'd eat one of them in a night sometimes. Yeah. But, you know, just not always, but you just think, right, okay, well, I never knew that. I never knew how ridiculously high in calories some of these foods are.
That's why it's good to check yourself in with MyFitnessPal, whatever it is. So, like,
yeah, you end up being shocked on some of the calories in some of these foods.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? So, like, you might just, not in a consultation, I'll say, but like on passing on the gym floor, they're like, oh, James, I just can't lose the weight, or this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, okay, then, you know, start tracking, blah, blah, blah. He goes, but I've been eating healthy. I'm like, well, what does that mean? And they list off a reel of healthy foods. I'm like, well, how much of it did you have? They were like you just said, avocado, bits and pieces. I'm like, but how many calories is that? They're like, oh, I don't know. Okay, well, you've eaten non-processed foods, healthy foods, granted, cool, but that doesn't mean you can't gain weight. They are non-processed foods. Probably harder to gain weight, probably less processed, less sugar and stuff in them, less, you know, but like you said, if you're sitting there picking on nuts, like a bag of cashew nuts at night, you're probably not going to be losing much weight.
No.
And that's like you said, eating healthy and a diet, two different things. So there was a thing like, if it fits my macros approach a few years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
It was like people were basically just eating garbage, like processed food, but then making it fit their macros. So you can get away with eating whatever you want, but because it's fitting your macros, you can still lose weight and you can still have a great body composition. Doesn't mean you're overly healthy though. Like you're still building your, these are basically the components you're building your body with. So they're low quality. You're not going to be building with, you know, all the kind of things you want. All your tendons and your enzymes, all these kind of things are being built out of processed food. So you're probably not going to function very well or feel very well if you do that for a long period of time.
If you are eating the wrong foods, I say wrong foods, just, I don't know, by definition. So people often talk about sugar. Is it as bad as people make out? If you have got sugar in your diet and you know that type of processed sugar, which is it as bad as people say? And is it, what's the impact of having that sort of food?
I mean, in terms of what we're defining as bad.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because there's nothing. It's not clear
Like,
of what's good, what's bad, because it's all about, like you say, what we've come to a conclusion of pretty quickly,
so like,
which is it is about balance.
If we're talking about like fatality, like the biggest factors for fatality is age and then body mass. So nothing you can do about age.
No.
So control your body mass, and then it's like small gains after that. You're not going to be making massive wins. So in terms of like sugar and how bad it is, I think it has an impact on your mood and your ability to control your blood sugar. Obviously, diabetes is terrible. You don't want to be, you know, diabetic. But I don't think we're talking about that level of extreme. But yeah, I don't think it's like, I'll have sugar. I'll have a beer at a weekend. I'll have, you know, ice cream and bits and pieces. But I try to find the balance and keep my body mass in check.
I think that's the point. What you just said there is about balance. When there's do you know Nigel who owns the CrossFit?
Briefly, yeah, I know of him.
So I was talking to him years ago about it, because I used to go CrossFit Basingstoke, and he just said it is about balance, and he was just like, he says every day he eats reasonably healthy or eat within the right calories, and he just says in the evening he'll have a little bit of ice cream, just a tiny bit, just to keep him motivated. He said because he really likes ice cream.
Yeah.
And he said, but that is like a tiny percentage of his daily.
Yeah.
And he said, but it keeps him motivated the next day. Just, And I think this is the thing that I didn't know all those years ago, and I don't think a lot of people know. They just think, well, now I'm going to try and lose weight, and I've got to be super clean, super healthy, super this.
Yeah.
And actually, for free to be able to do it long term, it's just about finding the right balance. You can still have some of those foods, but you just have to look at your overall diet and go, actually, look at it like one of the reasons I love Huel so much is because you can just easily replace a meal, or have a Huel, or have a salad, and actually just some of those more boring meals like breakfast or lunch, you can just have a nice, easy, normal meal and go, okay, I've done two good meals there.
Yeah.
And I think people just don't know that enough at the beginning. You're trying to get fit and healthy, and suddenly you're going to go, oh, starting January, this brand new health kick, and actually you can start winning today, tomorrow, if you just reduce your calories a bit, keep them in line, try and swap out some foods. Like it can be so subtle.
Very small changes.
Yes.
And over a period of 6 months, big impact. Been flying around.
It's been flying around the whole time.
Like one idea is like hitting a ball and the trajectory that ball takes. Like it only takes a very minor difference at the point of contact to the end point make a much bigger change. So it goes off in a different direction just because a very small difference at the start. So like it might be, whatever it is that person overeats chocolate. Go right. Well, I'm going to have X amount of chocolate and limit myself. And you want to do it daily, cool. But you've done that now. 6 months later, you've saved yourself 25,000 calories over 6 months. It's going to have an impact.
I think so often what happens is people build themselves up to, I'm going to start this new diet. They try and go into it fully, and then within a few days, a week or so, it just they can't have that longer term view. I didn't at the beginning, and that's why I'd sort of yo-yo a bit. And it's just down to knowledge and also being really impatient. So I was talking to another PT the other day. Actually, got Jim just over there, and he was just said, well, most of this is psychological. It's about having the knowledge. But it's also psychological because people are all are up and down. They have a bad day at work. They've got stress. And actually, it's just about just trying and become as balanced as you can, but people are so impatient. Oh, now I want to be fit. And James Smith said it, all those years. Well, you've been unfit for such a long time.
Yeah.
Why are you in such a rush to be fit as possible to try and show your friends or whatever? It's just you've got to just try and make these very slow, incremental changes to try and become healthier.
It's definitely in your mind, right? It's 100% in your mind. Like obesity is more of a psychological battle than it is physical. Like for someone who is obese, going to the gym is really daunting. Like being that unfit. Like,
I can imagine that's scary. I can imagine it's a horrible experience for them to go through.
I'm sure you have periods of time of injury or childcare or whatever it may be, like hectic at work, where your training is not what it was, and you're coming back to fitness, and you've got this set point in your head where, whether it's running, whether it's lifting weights, whatever it is, that I'm able to achieve this. This is what level I'm at. So when you go back to running, you can't do that, and you're absolutely gassed. You feel bad, but when you come out and you've never done it, and you instantly feel terrible, like just walking on a treadmill, whatever it is, it's not very motivating. So like
it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, just from the get-go, and it's probably not that enjoyable, especially when you see people bouncing off the walls doing CrossFit workouts and whatnot.
People don't realise it takes years to get to that level,
Yeah.
to be able to do a full CrossFit workout. I mean, they're brutal.
Yeah,
They are
or
brutal.
they've always done it, so they've never not done it. So like it's unfair for someone who's never trained and they're now 35, 40, 45 to come to the gym and expect them to have these, like even the motor pattern and the coordination to do certain movements. It's unfair for them to be like compared to X, Y, and Z, because I've played sports my whole life, so my movement's decent, my ability to pick up new information and techniques is okay, whereas that person who's never done sports, especially if they haven't done sports before they're like 10 years old, where you've ingrained neurological movement patterns, and you've kind of set that at that point. So if you haven't really developed your proprioception and your coordination at that point, you'll struggle to pick up high level motor patterns.
Say that again. Your neurological,
like pathways, how your body moves, your proprioception.
right? Okay.
So like all this stuff, I think it's like 7 or 10 years old, where like you kind of like have developed your ceiling for potential.
Right. Okay.
So if you've never done sports as a kid, it's going to be really difficult to pick up high level motor patterns later in life.
Is it?
Yeah. So it's really difficult for you, like arse to grass squats and like more like technical movements, clean and jerk, snatches. It's going to be pretty hard for you to put these information just together if you've never played sports as a kid.
Right. That's interesting.
It becomes way more difficult.
So if someone's in that situation, then what's the best route of right path then to go down as if you're going to recommend someone? If you haven't, maybe they didn't do much training or whatever when they were younger, they weren't that much into sports, but they're coming to you at 40, they feel like they're overweight.
There's definitely stuff you can do. Like there's no reason why you can't. Like I love like carries, like med ball carries, sleds, prowler pushes, all of those things. I try to do really basic. Like if someone comes in and they've got like terrible calf tightness, their hips are tight, their knees hurt, like deep squats are probably going to be more technique that's worth at that point. If they just need to lose some mass, just get them moving. So can you from a leg press? Can I get them pushing a prowler? Can I get them carrying a ball? Can I get them doing farmer's carry? Can I get them any of these kind of like simple low skill techniques? Can we get them doing those? You might get them to do a basic push, a basic pull, and then do like a spin on the bike for their rest period, so they can say an active recovery. So over the course of a session, they've burnt loads more calories than just standing around.
So just on that point, why would you at that stage, because again, a mistake I made years ago and I see lots of people making now, maybe you haven't done a lot of training before, you think, oh, I'm going to start going to the gym, and what you're recommending is strength-based training, but a lot of people will go to Fitness First, Go Left and get onto the cardio and get onto doing a run or getting onto the cross trainer and kind of do a very lazy half an hour. Why would you recommend not doing that type of stuff? Or is it still okay to be doing that? Or
it's definitely okay to do it. Like 100% is okay to, burn calories. I'd walk outside and walk on a treadmill myself. A blend is always, again, middle ground. Having a balance is probably the best. So minimum, like I try to avoid saying strength, but more resistance training. Just
resistance, okay.
Strength seems to put people off a little bit too much because they just have this bad association unless they're into it. Where it's like, oh, they're going to make me like grind and grit out like heavier weights, and I've got a sore back, that kind of stuff. So we just do like a couple of resistance training sessions a week, 2 basic full body sessions, lots of push pulls, like lunge patterns, squat patterns, hip hinge patterns, core accessories, so really heavily focused on core, McGill Big Three and all the warm-ups, that kind of stuff, core stability, just to prevent people's back pain. Tell them about bracing and engaging intra-abdominal pressure, so they know how to load their spine properly and how they actually do that safely, create pressure in the core to stabilize the back. And once they do that, they're a bit more confident. So we're trying to get a couple of sessions in a week minimum of resistance training, and then they might want to do a step count outside of this, so 10,000 steps a day or whatever it is. I'd prefer like a weekly target, so everyone's going to have a busy day, but have a weekly target. So if you miss your target on a day, you don't feel terrible. You can just make it up on another day and just be completely objective about it, not stress that you've failed. So a weekly target, and then if they want to do traditional aerobic training, cardio outside of that, there's no reason why they can't. You're going to be burning calories, but you're going to improve your body composition with resistance training way more than you would just cardio. You find with people who just do cardio, they end up getting lighter, but they just look the same but smaller.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said that actually, because one of the mistakes I made, I've always like, oh, I want to be slimmer, I want to be this, I want to be that, and then when COVID hit. Obviously the gyms were closed, and I thought, okay, this is real chance. Funny enough, because my wife was pregnant at the time as well, so I was like, okay, I'm not drinking. So it's the first time I'd actually I went pretty much the whole 9 months without drinking. So I was like, during this time, the only thing really available to me was going outside, because during the summer, of course, all that. But And I just carried on. I just mainly just went running. I got really addicted to it, actually. I first run for half an hour, then 45 minutes, then an hour. Then I was doing half marathons. I do a half marathon before work some days. And what happened was I did that for a good 9-month period. I lost about 15 kilograms. What I didn't realise, I started off about 80, I ended up on 65 kilograms when Logan was born.
65 kilos?
Yeah.
How much do you weigh now?
About 75, 76, 77. So I was really light.
Yeah.
But the thing was, I looked just like a skinny version of me, but still had a bit of a belly. And I just thought, how is it possible that I'm now running all of these marathons and half marathons and stuff, and actually I just look myself, but just a bit skinnier. And actually I was like, I've not gone on the right journey here at all. I mean, that was only in 2020. So, I mean, it's just, and I felt so deflated that I'd still felt like I was exactly the same. Although I'm 10, 15 kilograms lighter, I was like, and it's only actually, at the time I thought I looked great. I thought I'd done it, but I didn't feel any different. It's only recently that some of my closer friends were like, yeah, you were way too slim. You were way too skinny. You shouldn't have, don't ever get like that again. I was like, could have told me at the time. Yeah. But it's exactly right. When you do too much cardio, I mean, I was enjoying my running, so it was fine. But my composition it just made myself really small and skinny, and I never really understood.
So basically what you've done is you told your body weight to get rid of the muscle mass.
Got rid of everything. And then it's only when I found your gym again, I actually started training with weights. And now I'm in a situation in the last 2 or 3 months where I banned myself from doing cardio because I'm like, I want to get some of this muscle mass back again. Yeah. And actually just by not doing cardio and coming to the gym and using weights every day, I'm kind of back to where I was before. But I didn't really, it's such a stupid thing to say, to think. I was like, I was in a better position when I started. I still felt the same, although I was loads lighter. And then I seen some photographs of myself now. I'm like, I don't ever want to be like that again. Because you do lose all that mass when you literally just do, because you've got no resistance, therefore your muscles.
You're telling yourself your body goes, right, we're burning all of these calories, so we don't need to hold on to muscle mass.
No, and of course your body's going, well, I'm going to run every day, so I don't need all this mass.
Exactly right. It's easier for us to get rid of because you're giving the stimulus to your body to do it daily. You're doing it all the time, so you're in a calorie deficit. You're losing weight, but your body composition, like the way you actually look, probably isn't as good as you could have if you did a bit more blend and you did a bit more weight training, you held on to some muscle mass, and you also burn those calories as well. So that's that middle ground going on there.
I think that's the thing. It's okay to fail, because although I did loads of training and failed, technically I didn't, because I was being reasonably healthy and everything else like that, but it's all those little bits that over the 10, 20 years, you learn, and you're like, oh, okay, that's why you should do this or you should do that or whatever. But I'm much better to learn by doing something and then kind of going, didn't quite get the outcome there that I wanted. Yeah.
But that's how you end up where you are, right? You have that information, you're a bit more confident.
Action creates information.
Yeah. So you're in a much better position for it. Like I myself train the least I've trained in my entire life right now.
Well, you're busy.
Yeah, like just ultra busy, loads going on. Our focus is work. So my training has taken a backseat. But I'm now, a stone lighter, lack of muscle mass.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm like a measly 93 kilos now. I was closer to 100.
Wow.
So just dropping off.
Do you have one of those fast metabolisms? So therefore, if you don't, so I don't know where your maintenance would be, but if you don't eat a certain amount of food, then it naturally comes off, because there's the different body types, isn't there? I can't remember the names.
So like endomorph, ectomorph, that kind of stuff.
That one.
Yeah. So
so are you one of those? So therefore,
basically, when I was a kid, I was already really skinny.
Ah, okay. Because so some people naturally, my wife is like this. She's naturally very slim, and she very finds it hard to put on weight. Yeah. So some people are naturally like that.
So
I call you people gifted and lucky.
I had to actively overeat for a while to go from like 85 kilos. I think the heaviest I got was 105.
Right.
So
therefore, because if you weren't overeating, your body would naturally just...
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I probably gained too much too quickly.
Right.
But that was just because I wanted to compete at Strongman. I was just being a bit excessive at the time. To gain too much too fast, it's like, instead of having like a lean gain, build up over time and being patient with it. Went a bit too heavy too fast, but I built a lot of muscle mass at the time as well. So over that couple of year period where I did go heavy on the lifting 4 or 5 times a week, building a lot of muscle mass, I did gain body fat, but I could have easily lost the body fat and just did a diet phase when I got there.
Yeah.
I think it's way harder to build muscle than it is lose fat. Losing fat is way easier. Actually synthesizing and building new muscle tissue is way harder.
Right.
So I kind of did what I had to do to get there, and then you can kind of lean out along the way. Go heavy and then do like a little phase of dieting, and do heavy and a little phase of dieting, and so on and so forth.
So is there a reason why you wouldn't do, not I would say both at the same time, but sometimes people are nervous about maybe being in a surplus or eating a lot of food at the time, because then you also put on the fat as well. Mm-hmm. But then so you need, so that at that time you're putting on the fat, you're putting on the weight, but also then your body fat will be going up at the same time as well. Mm-hmm. And then you go on a little bit of a diet. So it's like you've got to choose which journey you're on.
So generally, only the closer you are to a novice, the more you can do what's called a body recomposition.
Okay.
Where you lose in body fat and gaining muscle mass at the same time. And then you often see people, their weight hasn't changed. And that's why they have a real struggle with the scale weight.
Right.
Because their body composition is changing, they're gaining muscle, they're losing body fat, but the scales haven't changed.
So is that is possible to be?
But only like novice.
Right, okay.
The more advanced you get down the athletic route, like of training, the less likely that's to happen.
Okay.
You're going to get to the point where you have to commit to one side or the other, or maintenance. But that just means you're going to maintain, right? So you either go, right, I'm going to actively look to build muscle, which means I'm going to be at high-end maintenance / surplus. And then the more surplus you go, the more weight you gain. So you've got more chance of building muscle mass, but you're also going to have more fat along the way.
Right.
So you can do that and do that and do that, get to the point where you've maxed out the amount of muscle you're going to build in one go, and then stabilize, maybe a little diet phase, and go again.
How long should those phases be? So if you're going to build for a period of time, because years ago you used to read about bodybuilding and they would talk about the bulk, then the cut, the bulk, then the cut. I never really understood it. I mean, I do understand it, but I never knew how to put that into practice. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't. So, like, how long would you call it?
Depends how extreme you go, right? So, if you gain so much fat, it actually inhibits your ability to build muscle.
Okay.
So you wouldn't want to go forever, because it's going to have a detrimental impact. So you don't want to be so over fat that you end up being lowering your ability to gain muscle.
Right. Okay.
So you want to keep that in check. So you're going to go through a phase, a period of time, and you can eye check that, use calipers, and go down that road.
And would you be ramping your calories, so slowly increasing your calories over that period? So just like increments of, I don't know, 100, 200, something like that. Is that how you would approach it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
If I stop gaining, I'll increase. But I'm taking averages. So I might weigh myself 3 times a week and take a weekly average.
Yeah.
And do the same for weight loss, rather than I weighed it on a Monday. And that hasn't changed, but it was lower Wednesday, Friday, but the day I weighed in, it was just higher. So it doesn't show that loss. So the average weekly weight is probably the best way to go.
Right.
You could just...
It's also that's water weight. You've drunk a load of water the day before.
Exactly.
You've had a late meal. You haven't digested it yet. Then therefore it's going to impact the result the next day.
Yeah, and especially females and their hormones can be all over the place.
Of course, throughout the menstrual cycle throughout the month.
Yeah,
they're going to be up and down.
So they can almost check their week 1 cycle weight to their week 1 cycle weight, but on the next phase, on the next month, and they can take that average over the month as well, just so they can have an understanding of their cycle, what happens to their weight at this time of the month. Obviously, you've got 3 different phases: luteal, follicular, and menses.
Okay. And
their hormones are going to be doing different things throughout that phase. So that might have an impact on how much water they hold and their body weight. So they need to kind of like get an understanding of that before they just weigh in and they're 3, 4, 5 pounds heavier, and they're like, "Whoa, what's going on here?"
Do you find women can get quite frustrated because of that? Just
Massively, yeah.
think I'm not progressing, but actually it's just the basics of you. You know, that's just your natural body.
That's the physiology. That's just what's happening.
Yeah.
I've seen some extreme cases where people hold on way more water than the average female, just because that's how their body works. They're like, I know I'm bloated. I don't need to weigh in. I was like, all right. It's way different for females.
Is it almost harder because of that? Because trying to lose a bit of weight, we're looking at the scales and going, oh, it is reducing. Therefore, you've got you've got some answers there. But then, I don't know what point of reference you can have if you're female.
I think for a man, you don't have these hormonal fluctuations, which makes it easier to track.
Yeah.
For a female, their hormones are fluctuating from week to week and month to month, and it can have an impact on their weight, and that has an impact on their mind. But there's also the social constraints with women and the impact they have on themselves make a big difference. And they are more emotional driven than men. So if they have a negative association to a number on a scale, regardless of how they look, it can be detrimental to their training.
Right.
I'm like, well, your body composition is improving, but they now fit in the dress they didn't fit in, but the scale weight hasn't changed. And you're like, well, it's going in the right direction, so don't worry. But they do worry, and you're constantly trying to have to reassure and confirm.
Well, because there was a period really to say stop worrying about what's on the scales, and just because that doesn't. For some people, it obviously does matter, but it also doesn't, because sometimes you're just making progress, but actually, I don't know if this is right, but you're turning your fat into muscle, and does muscle weigh more? So therefore,
so you can't transfer fat into muscle or muscle into fat. Like, right. It doesn't happen in that sense, but muscle is more dense and then weighs more than fat. So if you take up the same amount of space, muscle will take less space than fat. It's because it's more dense in weight. But you wouldn't transfer one into the other. You'll burn calories and you'll lose body fat, but you're not going to transfer that into muscle. It's a bit of a myth.
There's so many myths.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. It's so hard because then there's what do you believe and what's right, and I suppose it always comes back to what you're trying to achieve. Ultimately, most people, quite often, if you're going to the gym regularly, you want to lose some weight. But what I liked actually, what you said, which I'll go back to, which is setting yourself a goal. What sort of goals would you typically think about setting? Like, is that just a lifting goal? Is it like to do some sort of, because I think that would actually break down some of the challenges around consistency. Because I think so many people, I know years ago when I started training, I was like, oh, I'm going to run a marathon. Great. Well, that's going to make me consistent for 6 to 9 months because I've got this goal at the end. What sort of, but I'd also not recommend that necessarily based on the journey that I've been on, because I think you're absolutely right. We need to be far more balanced. And back then I was thinking, I'm going to run a marathon because I want to lose weight. Totally the wrong approach. I'm talking years ago now, but back in 2007, I think it was, when I did my first marathon. It should have just been about the achievement, not to lose weight. Because actually, what you find with trying to run a marathon, you actually end up eating back most of the calories anyway. But back then, the information wasn't available because you're so depleted, you end up eating loads. But what would you say is like good goals to, you're trying to stick to your calories, you're going to stick to your protein. What's a good type of goal that you could try and work towards?
So for the people who at the gym are doing like this 20-week challenge, so I'll give them a percentage of body weight to achieve.
Okay.
So if they are below 30% body fat, they have to lose 8% of their body weight. If they're over 30, they have to lose 10%. Just so it keeps some sort of fairness, because the more fat you have to lose, the more fat you're going to lose.
Can someone lose that much that quickly? So what, you're talking 5 months? Is that how much?
20 weeks. So
20 weeks.
4 months.
4 months. 4 months. So 4 months, you could lose 10%. Do you think?
Depends how fat they are.
Yeah. Okay.
For sure. If you've got a lot of weight to lose, you'll probably find people lose 2 or 3 kilos in the first few weeks.
Look transformationally different.
Yeah.
In that time.
20 weeks is a fair amount of time to do a phase of dieting, though.
Yeah, 4 months.
Yeah, you've got plenty of time to. Again, I think people go too hard too quick and then they burn out. But so there's that. So that's created accountability. So chances are they're going to be more consistent at the gym, more consistent in their daily habits. But for the training element and their habits and their goals, We might get people to do little in-house competitions, so they've got to train for, so they've got some accountability to train for. They have goal setting, so when they do come in for semi-private, they have all their one-to-ones at the end of the month. So they might go, right, I'm going to do a one-to-one, and what I want to work towards is this. So we tailor their training towards this training goal that should marry up with whatever their body composition goal is. So it might be a 10 rep max squat or whatever it may be. Just making examples up really. And that's led by them. What do you want to achieve, and how is it going to marry up to your goal? It could be, interval training on the rower. It could be whatever it may be. We just try and work out. I like little competitions, to be fair. So there's a whole group of people who go off and do little strongman competitions, just little amateur ones on a weekend. But it makes people focus on their training for 3 months.
Yeah. So when you do strongman, what do you do in that?
So literally like World's Strongest Man style.
Okay.
It could be atlas stones and deadlifts and log press and bits and pieces. So there's like tons of low-level strongman competitions all over the country run in gyms.
Okay.
So you might have a little handful of people who go, right, we're going to do that one. And now you've got 6 to 8 people all training for the same competition. They're all keeping themselves in check and accountable, and they're pushing towards one goal. And it just makes them more consistent in their training for the next 3 months. I try to make these little focus pockets and little subgroups within the gym that are all training for the same thing at the same time, and they all keep each other in check. That's cool.
Do you know what? I've never done that before. I've gone to gyms and I've trained, and there'd be CrossFit classes or whatever, and it's actually such a simple idea, but to have a little group, an account, it's almost like I feel like an accountability group, which you're going to go and train every day or whatever your cadence is, which you're then going to build a relationship with. Probably got a little WhatsApp group going on.
Exactly. All those little things. And what you don't realise is you've got a gym that's like one big WhatsApp group. So, we change class 10, so we put it in the WhatsApp group, and everyone's in there, and they go, okay, cheers, James. But all the people who go to the gym, they've got their own little ones as well that obviously I'm not a part of, and they're like, oh, I didn't know that person was even friends with that person, but they've got their own WhatsApp group with 2 or 3 other people. So it's all cool. They're all working towards each other, like keeping each other accountable. Works well, really well. That's the benefit of having a small gym opposed to a massive Fitness First.
Yeah. Do you when you obviously we go back to the business a bit, when you had the opportunity to take on the gym, did the size of the gym, did that play? Because I've been to lots of other gyms, which I was in America for a bit, so you've got the big gold gyms, and then you've got the Fitness First type gyms, and then you've got the CrossFit type stuff. But the size of the gym that you've got actually feels really perfect in some respects, because it's small enough for you kind of to know each other, but it's big enough to then have everything and train in the way that you want to. Was that kind of a conscious thing? Or would that be a conscious thing if you're looking at another gym in the future, maybe?
If I was moving forward, it would be.
Yeah.
We kind of so we basically got, when we looked at it, we got the biggest unit we could afford, essentially. And that's as simple as it was.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And I was very conscious that space is more important than lots of equipment. So floor space and having an ability to have people is more important than looking fancy with equipment.
That's one of the things I loved about your gym when I first came in, because I walked in and I just thought, there's space.
Yeah.
And the space, because then I thought, and this is the other difference between Fitness First. If I think about Fitness First, the last time I went, I was like, there's probably just a couple bars.
Yeah.
And I walked in, I was like, okay, all right, I don't know where I'm going to train with this bar, because I can't. There's no space to train. There's machines everywhere. As soon as I walked into yours, I was like, okay, I can grab a bar, and I've got loads of space.
Yeah.
And then so you can have your own little workout area, so you can do a CrossFit session or a hybrid or whatever. And I was like, this is good. And that's immediate. And I just thought, this gym is laid out perfectly.
Yeah. So 2 sides of the gym, track running down the middle of it, loads of cardio in terms of like ski ergs, rowers and assault bikes at one end, and then more of the weights at the other end. But I find myself because everyone knows each other, I have the ability to be like, right, that person, Zach, can you jump in with Simon on the rack? One person's deadlifting, one person's squatting. I've condensed space already, so I have the ability to do that because I know everyone and everyone knows each other and everyone's more than happy to do it. Like, so you don't get any like people in there with a bag, sat down, taking up loads of space. It just doesn't really happen that way. And the gym's pretty flexible and I can move stuff around really easily. So we've got those 2 extra racks in the middle. If I don't need to use them, I can put them together and put them to the side, and then the gym becomes very open planned. And you have this ability to run huge classes or pockets of classes. And we have the ability now, like Monday nights, you've got a strength class and a semi-private at the same time. So you're going to have a large amount of people in the gym at one time doing 2 different classes, but it works because they're all segmented in different ways. So yeah, it works. I end up a bit of like a Spanish waiter trying to like who's doing what, who's with what, and I can kind of like fit it all in perfectly. Just, you know, that bar's there, that's doing that, you're going to go do that. Oh, someone walks in, I go, well, I've written your program, so I know what you're doing, so you can jump in here, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it works well.
So thinking about your gym, and we talked about how you began, how are you going to scale? Because what I love about your gym, it's just the ethos, the approach, just everything about it. And I'd love more people to experience.
Yeah.
I feel, like I said to you earlier, I feel lucky that I have this gym on my doorstep. And I just think that needs to be in more communities, more people to be able to use gyms like this, because it's so different to a Fitness First or a Pure or something like that. And that's what gets your consistency. You know, since I've been training at your gym, I've been coming most days.
Yeah.
And that's just because I enjoy that hour. And I'm like, I need a bit of space with baby and work and everything else. And then I've actually reduced my training, because years ago I used to train for 1 or 2 or 3 hours. And I'm like, that's a bit silly because you're overtraining, overtired and all that kind of stuff. But actually just getting 1 good hour and then being strict and going home means I can come back every day. And I was like, well, the consistency is better. How are you thinking about the future? I don't know if you're thinking about scaling or building this out to be more premises, or what would you think about that?
I mean, good question.
Scary question though.
Yeah.
Because there's more debt, more risk.
Yeah. So
maybe.
if it carries on growing at the rate we're growing, we'll be at capacity, you know, within a year or 2. So
Okay.
We have to see when we get there, really. Like, I've talked about like I'm putting a mezzanine floor in, creating like a.
What does that mean?
So just another floor above the changing rooms.
Oh right.
And I could put like a section upstairs where.
Oh, I got you. Okay, so you'd actually go. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'd have where the stairs are already to the therapy room. I'd knock that down and make it'd be like 13 meters wide, 6 meters back. I've looked at getting the costings for the metal work already, but having an upstairs area, whether that's just a studio area, some stretches and some dumbbells, some machines, take some of the pressure off downstairs and have that isolated weight stuff upstairs.
Right.
And have more free floor space downstairs, just so you can fit in more of the stuff that you like. And then if you want to go and do some bicycles, you can just pop upstairs and get out of the heat when there's more people in the gym. That's the next goal. Outside of that, doing the same but better, maybe slightly bigger, saunas, steam rooms, that kind of stuff, in a much nicer unit.
Yeah.
Maybe one day. We'll see.
That sounds big,
Yeah.
expensive, and
Yeah, it's got to be financially viable, right?
I think that's always the challenge. Like when we speak in the gym, you're like, well, it's actually a challenge to be able to work out what to invest in, what's going to give the return.
Yeah.
Because then you've got you've got membership versus PT.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's always the composition where you're always going to try and work out, is this financially viable? Is this the right thing for the gym? Is this going to move us forward?
Obviously, the community and the people create the gym itself. And I would say, 90% of what we do is class-based and community. Like, there's not that many people who come into the gym and do their own thing and don't get on, or like, not don't get on, but like, they're not really interested in speaking to people, and they just have their headphones in, come and go. That doesn't happen very often.
You just described me, haven't you?
So like, but like, so I can't, that's going to be like a limiting factor. So we don't have the space to go, right, we're going to sell loads of memberships and expand that way. We have to be class orientated.
Really? Okay.
So if we get to the point where there's, you know, hundreds of members and they all want to turn up on a Monday night and I can't control who comes in,
True.
that's a massive issue. Whereas at Fitness First, that can happen. But that's what their model is. They've got massive gyms. So we've got a big space, but it's not a Fitness First style space. It's just a bigger unit. Because it's like a box, everyone can see each other. You can't hide.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a difficult process. But yeah, with the classes and structure, I can control the busy periods and who's in at what point. Everyone books on. I know who's coming in at what point for the classes, semi-private, no matter what it is. But just having an open gym where it's massively busy would be difficult for us to scale, because then you become Fitness First.
And I feel like that's not the direction to go
No.
in, because, you know, Fitness First has got its market. Your market is different to that.
100%. Obviously, we charge a little bit more, but we're a bit more personable, and that's just kind of the offset you have to have. Whereas like the 24-hour gyms, like Pure Gym, are almost taken over Fitness First, really.
Well, that is if I was closer to a 24-hour gym, that would be of interest.
Yeah.
And that would definitely be a bit more interest than a Fitness First, you know, overall, because then you have the flexibility of the extra hours, you know, extra time and everything else. And especially with baby, you're awake on all sorts of hours now.
Yeah, exactly.
There was a guy I trained with ages ago, and he said he used to train just with his hours. He used to train at midnight, and he said, I was like, "Is it busy?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's like it's busy at that time." I was like, "At midnight?" He's like, "Yeah." So it's
Yeah, my body clock doesn't work like that.
no
10
no.
o'clock, I'm asleep.
Yeah, me too. I'm absolutely done. I think that's the thing when you get into something I didn't know years ago, get into a good circadian rhythm. Now I naturally wake up at 5. I don't even I do have an alarm, but I will just wake up at 5.
Yeah.
Pretty much. As long as if I'm not drinking too much alcohol and everything else, I keep my diet. I wake up at 5. My God, with a baby, by 9:30, I am done.
Yeah.
I am absolutely done. So I'm like, just
My missus hates it because we're like, right, Friday night, Saturday night, whatever it is, let's sit down, watch a movie. 10 o'clock, I can't keep my eyes open. Like,
and that's the funny thing, because then you get to weekends, and I was always a proper night owl when I was younger. So it was like, and that's also years ago, which would also mess up your circadian rhythm, because I'd be out all night on Friday and Saturday, and then you're trying to get into a routine during the week, and you're just all over the place constantly. But then with a baby now, I think this is why it was tough at the beginning, because baby was there needing food or something throughout the night, or cry, and then, you know, that's 2 or 3 times, you know, and then you're trying to support the baby, and then you're trying to. My training for the first 6 months of having a baby was really non-existent, because you're just too tired.
Yeah.
There's just no way, you know, it's just no way of actually
do a full day's work, miss out on sleep. Yeah, it's difficult.
It's impossible without the sleep.
Yeah, it is crazy. Sleep is like habitual, isn't it? It's like you create a routine and a habit, and that circadian rhythm almost follows you. I feel like I'm so ingrained in my routine because it's structured around work. It's like solid. Like, finish late, but I'll get home, I'll have some food, I'll have a shower, but I'm asleep within 2-3 minutes when I get in. Like,
Has it always been that way for you?
I've always been a good sleeper.
Right.
Like, I've never had insomnia or anything like that. I've never had to get up consistently as early as I do right now, but again, I'm up at 5. Alarm will go off, but in the summer, I'm like ready to get up. Winter is a different story. It's a bit more tough, isn't it? But yeah, I'll get 10 till 5, and I could quite easily sleep. And unless Leo gets up, I'm not getting up in the middle of the night. Jess is happy to sort him out for me, so sometimes I'm like oblivious to it all. She's up. She goes, "Well, he was up at 2 o'clock last night." I was like, "Oh, was he?" Sorry about that. Good luck.
Yeah.
So,
That's the partnership, isn't it? That's you know, you've got the gym, you've got baby, you've got your home, working together. It's a big old partnership that you've got there to make everything work.
It's a fine balance.
Yeah.
So yeah. Hopefully in a few years we have a bit more flexibility, but for now, it is what it is. But you know, it's fun.
Well, thank you for coming in. This has been a real pleasure. I think that has been really helpful for a lot of
Okay.
people trying to get into fitness, understand nutrition. I wish I'd probably spoken to you 15 years ago when I was trying to get into things, because I just went off on this journey trying to figure things out, reading social media, all this conflicting advice. If someone had said to me when I first started, it's a calorie deficit, that would have saved me a lot of time and effort going off on these different paleo and keto, and I would have been far more successful far quickly if I'd just known that. And I remember thinking for years, there must be a rule here. And then I'd be, just doing no one knew.
Yeah.
It felt like no one knew, because
Logical
I went to
structure to follow.
yeah, if there was just a logical, if there were some rules of the game, then I could follow those rules, and I could just never find the answer. And I went to 4 or 5 different PTs, and not one person said the words calorie deficit. Now, I didn't hear those words until I met James Smith, obviously online.
Yeah.
And then it kind of debunked the last 15 years of going, oh, it's a calorie deficit. And then I saw some of those social posts he would do between the principle and the method, and I was like, oh, it all connects now. I get it. And then it took me years.
It makes sense, doesn't it? When the penny drops, you're like, oh yeah, make that.
Yeah, it
understand
does. And it does. And that's why I just think I wish more people knew that sooner on their fitness journey, because it would just save so much time and pain, and the feeling good, the not having the right foods, the this and that. So I'm so pleased that we were able to chat about it, because if anyone listens to this now, they're beginning their fitness journey, no, calorie deficit,
Yeah.
focus on your protein, focus on doing functional training, using resistance. I think you'll fall in love with training like I love training now, but you'll do it quicker.
Yeah.
You don't go through all the years of pain going, why am I so bad at this?
Yeah. I think, final message would be just to enjoy the process, enjoy the journey.
It's so easy to say.
Yeah.
It is hard though.
Yeah. Find something you like doing, and then just get your head down, enjoy it. Trials and tribulations.
Very good. Well, thanks for coming in. It's been a real pleasure. And this, I'll say it again, because I'm going to keep saying it, which is I love your gym.
Thank you.
And I'm pleased you set it up, because it's really helped me with my training. And I love going to that gym every day. It's an hour to myself and an hour of really good training at a great gym. So I appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.